Three, two, one. We're live, my friends. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's comparison test, and it is all about the Hisense U8Q. U8QG? Yes. I put the specs below, and yes, we are live. So if you have any questions, we'll jump into it. But I want to go over the specs real quick because this is pretty amazing, and it's kind of funky this year. So we'll go over the sizes, the size differences, and the different specs for the different sizes. Now, in the meantime, hello everyone, and welcome to. First, let me check audio. I don't want an adventure where, wait, I can't hear you at all, FOMO. So, making sure you guys all hear me. And as soon as that's out of the way, we'll jump into the specs of the Hisense U8Q. Now, this is out right now. It's available in the USA at Best Buy, and I hear it's also available the rest of the world, Europe, UK, and so forth. And the question is whether this, and I'm going to call this near flagship because I know Hisense may have something else brewing in the back, but for the price and for the specs, it might as well be flagship. These are simply outstanding hardware specs. So, yes, thank you, Nathan, for confirming. He can hear. There we go. I'll put this down here. Move this up a little bit so you guys can see. And then we'll see the TV shortly. But I want to get you guys excited for the specs because this is the first time the specs are so flagship level. Honestly, at this point, Samsung has fallen behind. Their Neo QLED series doesn't come close to this in many ways, right? So we will jump into the specs real quick to get you all a flavor. And I know both TVs are here, as you can see. There's a top TV and a bottom TV. I won't tell you which is which, but you'll see it shortly. First, the sizes. The Hisense U8Q goes from 55-inch to 100-inch, but depending on the size, you'll get either an ADS Pro panel or a VA panel. So the ADS Pro and the VA panel, what's the big difference? ADS Pro offers a wider viewing angle because it uses a slightly different technology than VA, more similar to IPS, made by BOE. And then you have the VA panel. On angle, slightly better contrast, right? Better native contrast. Off angle, maybe a weakness. And what's interesting is Hisense recognizes this, and I believe they have a bit more dimming zone, a bit brighter mini LED to adjust for the ADS Pro losses off angle or on angle. Off angle, it's great. On angle, they want to be able to compete with their VA panel. So if you want an ADS Pro panel, 55-inch, 75-inch, and 100 inches. And what I have is a 65-inch VA, which is perfect because it's going against the Bravia 9. So it needs all the contrast it can get to see how well it does. And at the 85-inch, it's also a VA panel. So you have choices, HDR support, of course, both Dolby Vision and HDR10 Plus, if that is important to you. I think it's not a big deal. Now, the peak brightness, the smallest and the largest sizes. So at 55 inches, peak brightness is 4,000 nits, but don't worry. The difference from 4,000 to 5,000 is barely noticeable because, as we said, it's logarithmic, right? So going from 4 to 5 without a meter, not a big deal. And at 100 inches, trust me, that is super bright. I don't think it needs to be at 5,000 nits. Nevertheless, at 100 inches, it's technically 4,500 nits. The pricing already is outstanding. So if you look at what the MSRP is supposed to be, literally, it's released and the MSRP is gone, right? Street pricing for this 65-inch at Best Buy is $13.98 right now. And I was like, wait, this is crazy good. And of course, if you have $2,000 to spend, 75 inches gets you the ADS Pro version. But the big one this year is going to be that 100-inch $5,000 TV. I cannot wait to see how that goes against the best 100-inch TVs out there. Now, the number of dimming zones, so you're going from 1,000 dimming zones at the 55-inch, 2,000, which is what I have here at 65 inches, and then up to 6,000 dimming zones at the 100-inch. But to me, I think the dimming zone thing, we're already there. Seeing what Bravia 9 can do with slightly less dimming zones than any other mini LED it's come against, hey, it's all about software, right? So I think we're good with dimming zones. Native refresh rate is 165 Hertz. But the best part is now you're getting 3 HDMI 2.1. This is a first. I've not seen this before from anyone other than LG and Samsung. They've designed this to be a gaming TV as well. And you get a fourth at 165 Hertz. I confirmed it. It's a USB-C display port. So for PC gamers, because that's relevant to you guys, you can use DisplayPort via USB-C on this TV. So you got USB-C at 165 plus 3 HDMI at 165 native refresh. That's pretty amazing. Now, obviously, we'll see how it really goes for gamers. And I'm not going to spoil it for you because I know Brian's testing it right now. But as far as console gaming, this is complete overkill. I'm so excited to test console gaming on this. So if you have any questions about these specs, ask away. But I know the most important part is how does it look against the Bravia 9? So with that out of the way, let me say hello to everyone one more time. Thank you for coming, everybody. See a lot of regulars. Lisa, Chris, Wyndham, Matt, and Bev. Always good to see you. Getty, hey Getty, I know you had the first Hisense 100-inch. If it's time to upgrade, this would be the TV to upgrade too. And you'll see me disappearing in order to raise the exposure a bit so you guys can see a little bit more of what I'm seeing and compare for yourself, right? So there you go. That's the Hisense U8Q. Let's add the Bravia 9. There we go. And already you're seeing the Hisense U8Q slightly brighter. So we're going to go over a little bit of everything. We'll do brightness comparisons, color gradient, color specular highlights in terms of the color detail. How's that processing? How's that tone mapping compared to the Bravia 9? And this is a first for me and you as well. I literally unboxed it this morning at 8:30. Just enough time to get it set up, make sure everything's working, firmware updates, both TVs. And so what you're seeing is what I'm seeing for the first time. It is in its proper mode. So the next step is I'm going to show you the settings I used. And then, oh, what a great place to pause. We'll pause right here. And let's do settings right now, real quick. Here we go. But before we jump into settings, let's say hello to everybody. And yeah, that thing, 4,000 nits, the Hisense is hitting it. Right, because we know, first of all, Bravia 9 cannot hit 4,000 nits. It barely hits above 3,000, if that, right? So depending on your panel, your size, it's anywhere from just below 3,000 to at 3,000. The Hisense U8Q is supposed to hit 4,000 solid, with 5,000 technically being possible, and this is 4,000 nit content. And so you're already seeing that the Hisense is trying to hit that content brightness, and it's pretty amazing. So we're going to look at these type of content. Again, do you see this in real shows? No. Watching Columbo, Bionic Woman, not a big deal. So we'll have those comparisons at some point. But I just want to see it flex because new movies coming out, maybe they'll flex to 2,000 nits plus. We'll see what happens. But I'm really curious to see how Hisense has improved its image processing. And already I'm seeing differences in the scene. But I'll show you guys the settings in a second. And then, you know, we'll see how it goes. Bravia already look has better brightness. And let's see. Bravia 9, better color contrast. Brightness goes to U8, but contrast, depth, and color saturation to the Bravia 9. So maybe I have bad settings. So let me share my settings with you guys first. And I'm going to turn up the exposure just a touch here. There we go. So you guys can see the differences. And again, I didn't have time to pull out the reference monitor. So who knows which one has it right. As you can see, let's start with the Bravia 9 settings and picture settings. Make sure you guys can see the picture settings. All right. So professional mode, that's the most accurate picture setting, and brightness will be, got to set it to max, all of that, gradation preferred, that's the most accurate setting. Auto local dimming on medium is its best for everything. Like this is it. Peak luminance high because it's HDR, okay? Color, it is expert 1, most accurate mode, live color is off, and that's it. On the Hisense, what we got here. So filmmaker mode, yes, that works. Brightness high, peak brightness on high, contrast 50. Now I haven't had a chance to play with this to match it to reference, so this is out of the box. Everything else is off. I've turned off dynamic tone mapping. We may turn it on or off to see if it makes a difference. Actually, let's see if it does make a difference. Does it? See this scene? Hardly does anything. It might make it a little bit brighter, but I'm going to keep it off because it's easily within the range of the TV without any dynamic tone mapping needed. And okay, so let's look at the color. Definitely warm 1 is the more accurate one. It's strangely, warm 2 is a bit cool. See that? Warm 2 is not even warm. So when you get it out of the box, it is warm 1. That is correct. And I turned the low blue light off, so there's no problem there. I left color space on auto, turned off all the enhancements. All right, and so here we are. Now I think there's also an auto menu here. Yep, so you could jump straight to picture mode and other stuff if you want, but sometimes I feel it's just faster going through the settings. Okay, so here we are. Oh, let's see what we're going to see. And this is correct in Detroit. Black levels, local dimming, always a compromise on LED or mini LED TVs, LCD TVs specifically. It's either raised blacks or dimmer highlights. And so let me describe the personality of the Bravia 9. Definitely they are going for perfect blacks, and so they are slightly dimming the highlights compared to an OLED. It feels to me that the Hisense is going for the specular highlights, but as a result, its blacks will be slightly raised, as you can see right here, compared to the Bravia 9. So let's move on and see what we got, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are in a perfectly dark room, you're going to have different settings for your TV versus a bright room. The Hisense U9N, or the U9N, U8Q, I had the U9N last year, and I was quite disappointed by its image processing relative to the U8N and the U7N. And this year, they definitely has addressed that image processing issue. Oh, good. We're going to start hitting some. Oh, so here's a good one to stop. Here's a great one. Okay. So this is why I stopped. Exposure is way too hot. Let's go down a bit. Okay, I think we captured this one pretty well right here. All right, who sees that sun on the Sony compared to the U8Q? So the U8Q is hitting the brightness. That far left definitely is what it should be. Super bright. Everything is really bright. And the Sony is bringing down the brightness so they can capture all the color. I'm going to have to bring my reference monitor out just to see which one has it right, because they're so slightly different. It's so much more orange on the Bravia 9. Oh, thank you. Let me take off this comment. There we go. Okay. What are you guys' thoughts? Because this is a great example of doing two completely different things depending on the TV you have. Let me take my exposure down another touch. And I wonder if dynamic tone mapping would change this a bit. So let's try that. So this is where dynamic tone mapping may make it look more like the Sony. Off. It does. There you go. So dynamic tone mapping did a little bit of something there. So when it's too bright and it appears to be clipping, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on because Sony has it on. Sony's dynamic tone mapping should always be on. It's either gradation preferred or brightness preferred. Brightness preferred will clip and just push for brightness, which is not what we want. Since the Sony has gradation preferred on, it appears that Hisense's dynamic tone mapping on is similar to gradation preferred, except there's a bit more of that orange color on the Sony. And yeah, I'm very impressed by the Hisense so far though. I mean, it's come a long way compared to previous years. It's very close. All right, so what do you guys think? Oh, and lightning too. So dynamic tone mapping on the Hisense is now on. 4,000 nits. And the Hisense is really hitting that 4,000 nits closer than the Sony. So you're getting that impact in that bright area. But if you want that orange sun, you have it in the Sony, right? So you got to choose. Oh, here's another great one. Last year, the Hisense did not do this scene as well. And this year, it may not either. The contrast on the Sony feels a little bit better. So I'm going to pause right here and lower the exposure a bit more, if I can. All right. So this definitely feels a bit tighter right here on the Sony. And this is the little things, right? When you want to unseat the best, you have to know what you need to work on. And I know Hisense is watching this. This is why we're doing this. When Hisense builds their TVs, right, they're putting in everything, but who has time to test for every bit of content? So it's kind of like our job as reviewers to tell them, look, this needs work. You got more dimming zones. Why does the Bravia 9 look so good? And if you think it's brighter, let me check the exposure on that scene to see if the Bravia 9 lowered the brightness in order to do what it's doing. So let me see here. Nope, same brightness. So this is what's amazing to me. That scene, both this brightest part on both TVs, it's a match, but Sony was able to process better contrast there. So this scene, pushing the brightness bright enough, right? Sony is able to hit it, as well as the Hisense, but the Hisense is losing some of that fine detail that we talked about. So this is good because, why is this good? Oh, it's $1,000 cheaper than the Sony. So, you know, you're going to give up on something. But look at the rest of the scene, right? Let me turn up the exposure so you can see how well it does in the rest of the scene. It's not like it's terrible, but you know, you got to nitpick. If you want to unseat the best, there we go. I mean, look at the rest of the scene. I think it looks phenomenal. The Hisense did well here, and the colors match. So let me stop and say Hisense's, I mean, a lot of this is because its contrast is a drop behind Sony. I think it's software. Because with more dimming zones, it's not the hardware, that's for sure. Now, is it possible that if I lowered, let me look if I can play with the shadow detail. Because in the past, that's what I've had to do to match the Sony, and they do have this black level, right? So let me see if it does anything. Let's just go the other way. Okay. All right. Does it help? Does it help? Nah, it's too dark. Nah. It did not help that part of the scene. So yeah, I'll keep it at 0. It's too subtle. Let me see. Yeah. Oh, AI contrast, maybe. Low. Ah, medium. Okay. Nah, high, terrible. Medium, low, off. Low doesn't do much. No, medium's over sharp. So basically, AI contrast is sharpening. It's over sharpening the detail. Off is still the most natural, and I'll leave it off. It didn't help so much that I would turn it on, and definitely the AI contrast, the darkest areas, it lowers it by another 15-20%. It's pretty visible. So yeah, let's move on. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so let's talk about this because this is a good point you're making, Rick, but I think you're overstating that it's that inferior. I don't want people to think that this is an inferior processor. You really won't be able to adjust the Hisense to compensate for the inferior processor. So yes, I see that this processor does not match the Sony, for sure. Now, what are we comparing it to? We're comparing it to a TV that's about $1,000 more, right? If you look at the prices, Sony, this TV is like over 2,000, what, 2,300? This is 1,400, so something like $900 difference. Where's that $900 going? Clearly, the processing on the Sony. And oh, what a great place to pause. So right here, you're going to see some color issues. I'll turn up the exposure here. You guys can see what I see here. Hoping you guys can see that. So there's some. All right. So what I'm trying to show you is the Sony has cleaned up this image very well, right? But here, the Hisense, there is a bit of posterization, pixelation, macro blocking. But the problem is the color of the macro blocking on the Hisense is slight green, whereas the color of the similar macro blocking on the Sony is the same color as the background. And so it doesn't stand out. Not that the Sony doesn't have macro blocking, but the macro blocking is the same color, which is very interesting. They have the macro blocking, but on the Hisense, because it's slightly green, you see the macro blocking. Because I look close at the Sony, I go, oh wait, it does have macro blocking, but it's the same color as the rest of the clouds, so it doesn't stand out as much. Now it's hard to see on the, maybe you can see it. I'm looking at my YouTube monitor right now. I want to make sure you guys can see it. And yeah, actually you can see it. So if Hisense can adjust, so this is to your point, Rick, it's these little subtle nuances, right? So here's another thing for you, Hisense. Everyone has macro blocking, right? It's the source. This is the issue. Now, look at the color of the macro blocking, right? What the Sony did is match the color to the background, and you don't see it as much, but on the Hisense, you do. There's those little things. All right, let's move on. But I love it, though. That's pretty cool. Well, I love you, Sony. Thank you for doing that crazy cool thing. Turn off dynamic tone mapping on the Hisense, right? Now, let's see if it makes a difference if I turn it off. Maybe the macro blocking won't be as visible, so we'll turn it off. But you guys saw the disadvantage when we did turn it off, right? Remember, the Sony has it on. So you're willing to hamstring the Hisense. Sony's tone mapping is on. That's why it's called gradation preferred. But we'll turn it off. Does it get better? Yeah, it's a little bit smoother. So for darker scenes, leave it off. So we'll just leave it off on average, right? It's still discolored, but it's not as obvious. So dynamic tone mapping on in the darker scenes like this, obviously you don't need it. This scene is unnecessary. Whereas on the Sony, you don't toggle it on and off. It's always on. It appears on the Hisense, keeping it always on. Here's the good news for you guys. There is no content that you'll be watching regularly above 2,000 nits. And since this TV natively can easily process 2,000 nits without dynamic tone mapping, the way it's aggressive dynamic tone mapping, then you could leave it off and you should be okay. It was those super bright scenes that it needed that kind of help. Oh, here we go. Ah, nailed it. Love it. So let me turn down the exposure here. There we go. So you guys can see the detail. Both are excellent, though, in this scene. Excellent. I definitely have to bring out the reference monitor to do a head-to-head because this Hisense has really impressed me so far. Okay, so in this dark scene with the bright highlights, right? Now what I do notice here is, again, dynamic tone mapping is off. The Hisense U8Q appears to be lifting the shadow just a touch because the grass is very visible. And I'll turn up the exposure so you guys can see that. I don't think the grass should be that visible. But it's a brighter green than the Sony. And I think you can see it here, right? Oh yeah, there we go. Yep. Okay, so this is where the Hisense may, if you throw the meters on it, it's clear that it's maybe lifting the brightness a little bit on the lower end of the OTF curve. I know you guys hate to hear that, but that's just what it is. So most content you're probably not gonna notice, but you know, we're gonna pick pixels apart. That's what it is. All right, let's move on. Oh, the impact scene. Oh wow. This is what I call clipping. And so there we go. Now, the shadow detail is completely, or rather, in the brightest scene, right? So in this scene, it's super bright. The Bravia 9 has brought the tone mapping down very well, and you see the clouds, it's all of its glory. On the Hisense, it is clipped. And let me see if dynamic tone mapping helps. Because again, the Sony has dynamic tone mapping on, but you don't have to toggle on and off. That's the magic of the Sony, I guess. All right, let's do this. On. Yep, turning it on. Oh, look at that. Right? So I guess I'll have to toggle it on and off for you guys. I will leave it on because many of these scenes are going to be bright. But even with it on, look at the depth of the dark part of the clouds. So right here, definitely, you can even see it on YouTube. It's going to be darker than the Hisense. And again, I'm helping out Hisense here, right? This is constructive criticism because Hisense, you're doing a phenomenal job with this level of brightness. But now, fine tune it. Sony has less dimming zones, as a reminder, and they're able to shut down those dimming zones right there to give that darkness in the clouds. Let me lower the exposure a bit more so you can see this. This is just so good. All right. Yeah, you can see that. You can see that's what I'm talking about. Bright scene, clouds. Now the question is the Hisense pushing that brightness so bright that it cannot bring it down? Whereas the Sony is like, you know what? That area of the sun doesn't need to be that bright. So let's check to see if in this scene, the Hisense is hitting brighter. No, oh my gosh, it's the same brightness. Oh, I'm gonna have to clap my hands. Sony, amazing what you just did. So, same brightness. This spot right here, I was convinced that the Sony lowered the brightness to get that contrast, and it didn't. Wait. Bravia 9, killing it with this scene. So, now, it doesn't mean that Hisense cannot do this. They just need to know what they need to fix. So we'll pause here. Hisense. Oh, and by the way, thank you, Jennifer Gala. Look, I just jumped into the content. This is all Jennifer Gala's material, right? I mean, come on. Who creates such amazing content where I'm able to separate these TVs other than Jennifer? So check out her channel, the HDR Super channel, which is what we're watching right now, and she has a second channel, Jennifer Gala. She does Atmos content for your comparison. So once I get into the soundbars, we'll use that. But I just love her HDR content. So check out the HDR Super channel. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for making this stuff. I love it. Well, here's a great one because here we are again. And dynamic tone mapping is still on. So here we are again. Right here. I can see the fine details on the Sony there. This one is super bright, but I'm losing some of the gradation, just a little bit, right? Nitpicking, I know, but I have to. We just have to do this. but the rest of the scene looks pretty solid. Yeah, they're matching their brightnesses quite well in this scene. The Sony is not falling behind in brightness because the scene doesn't call for anything brighter. We'll get to the 4000 nit stuff shortly. I just want to see all the hard stuff. This is the hard stuff that Hisense was unable to do as well last year. Much better this year. Not quite Bravia 9, but closer for sure. Actually, you know what? I think that's the one. Is that it? No, it's the next one. Ah, that's the one. Okay. Oh, got a super chat. Yes, let's hit that. Thank you, Jason Brown, for your generosity. Looking to buy a new TV, deciding between the Sony Bravia 8, 65-inch, or the LG C4. So, if you're a gamer, get the LG C4, call it a day. The Bravia 8, skin tones, it's the Sony thing. They do so well. If you're watching movies or cinema, that's the way to go. And 1 second here. Let me turn down exposure a bit so you guys can see the difference. Right, I'm going to lower the exposures just a bit more. So what I'm looking at and trying to expose for you guys is there's these fine clouds here. And it's super bright, and you can see the detail in the clouds, even from where I'm standing about 15 feet away. Here, it's there, but the contrast just isn't there. Although, from here, you can tell the difference. And I'm hoping you guys can see that. Yes, you can see it on YouTube. So there we go. Now, everything else is the same, right? If Hisense walked in, hey, we did it. I'm like, no. You see this, right? But let's look at the brightness. Did the Sony fall behind in brightness? Oh, and the Sony is brighter. So that's another thing. So not only did Sony do this scene brighter than the Hisense, but it added contrast. Amazing, amazing. I'm wearing an LG hat and I sound like a Sony fanboy, but I just gotta say, I'm so impressed. This TV right now continues to be the king. So far, it's like Sony is flexing. Bring it on. Yeah, I know you're 200 pounds heavier than me, but let's see, let's put on some gloves and see what happens, right? And it's just doing so well. So well. Oh, look at that detail. Love it. Okay, back to your question, Jason. Thank you for your patience. So here's the thing. Sony Bravia 8, as you can see, Sony is very focused on skin tones and colors and making it a cinema experience. The C4 is a gaming TV. So if you're just console gaming, PS5, Xbox, I think the Bravia 8 is absolutely fine. But if you are more into PC gaming, you want every nuanced setting, okay, C4, I can see why you're going there. But I find that out of the box, the C4 takes a lot of tweaking to get the skin tones right. Last year, I just felt the C4, although better than C3 for sure, it had a bit of green tint on some of the TVs I saw. And at the M-Wave comparison, it just did not compare to even the B3. The B3 I thought had better skin tones, right? So if you are streaming, watching movies, all that stuff, get the Bravia 8. Good enough. Both are good enough. C4 might be slightly brighter if you put it on a meter, but for most people, the brightness is not a big difference. I think the C5 this year does step up in brightness if that specular highlight is important to you and you can't afford the G5, but otherwise, prices are the same, go with the Bravia 8. Or if it's within $100, $200, I'd still go with the Bravia 8. Once you get into the $300 range, now you have to decide it's a value proposition. And another thing is, many people, they prefer Google TV and hate LG's WebOS homepage, but that's personal, right? So your call there, right? And Xdarkio says Chinese brands still have a long way to go in terms of processing, but they have the edge in terms of hardware and value for the money. Absolutely. If your budget is right now $1,400, I'm not going to tell you to spend $900 more to get these little things. We're going to watch content where it's normal, meaning it's under 1,000 nits. Well, you see the differences there. Because right now, I'm impressed with where the Hisense is in terms of color, in terms of just overall presentation under 1,000 nits, right? Maybe slightly lifted, but you'll notice that with a reference monitor next to it. Oh, here we are at 1,000 nits or 10,000 nits. Like, I can't see. So at 10,000 nits, right? The Bravia 9 is keeping up. That's amazing. I'm going to pause that. So let me see if 10,000 nits, if it really is brighter here. Nope, same brightness. The brightest part of the scene right here, both are bringing it down. So it's possible that the Hisense will hit max brightness in vivid mode because the Bravia 9's vivid mode is not as aggressive. So, let's see. Let's try that right now. Let's put it in vivid mode to see if this scene, that's where it's hitting it. So professional, cinema, standard, vivid. All right. Oh, yeah, that's pretty bright. Okay. Oops, there we go. There we go, vivid. All right. Let's see who wins the vivid mode war here. Same brightness. No, the Bravia 9 is a touch brighter. All right. Oh, and to be fair, Hisense has not had any firmware updates. So I opened the box, I tried to update the firmware. It says you are up to date. So if there's a firmware update in the works, it definitely needs some love and care because it's not brighter than the Sony, unless I have one of those magical Sony models that's above 3,000 nits. I might. It's panel lottery. Might have gotten lucky. All right, let's put it back in filmmaker mode here. There we go. We are in filmmaker mode again. Okay. So the reason, now in some scenes, the Hisense did show it was slightly brighter, but then in almost all the scenes, the Sony was a match, and in some scenes, the Sony was brighter. So I'd say it's a wash in terms of brightness. Hisense, you're coming so close this year, so close. Just a firmware update away. Now, it's a gaming machine? Possibly. So that's the other trade-off. If you need something that's close to the Bravia 9, but has 3 HDMI 2.1 ports, plus a PC display port, all of them support up to 165 Hz native. I can't think of a mini LED TV that'll do that. So can you imagine 100-inch gaming, 165 Hz? I mean, that thing is going to be fun. So there's a use case, trust me. And at that price, it's like, yeah, you know what, 90% of the Bravia 9 and that 10% is Jennifer Gala stuff. You might live with it, right? You just might. Hey, Sab, thank you for your generosity. Huge fan, FOMO. Thank you. $1,000 budget. Oh, yeah. The best I found is the 55-inch S90D or the 65-inch QM8. I'm a massive gamer. What would you recommend right there? 55-inch S90D. Because, yes, size is great. But if you're a gamer, it's all about the latency. It's all about the different motion settings you get with the S90D that you do not get with the QM8. Now, the QM8 is great for console gaming. The S90D, though, that thing is just, wow, it's so dark. What's happening here? All right. There we go. All right. You see a little bit more detail there. Yep, it feels definitely lifted. The Bravia 9, native out of the box, I'm sure, so for those of you who plan to get it calibrated, you could probably address the lifted black levels on this TV, but out of the box, the Sony is slightly better, more accurate contrast. And I've checked it against the reference monitor many times. So the black levels on the Sony is near accurate. So you could use the Bravia 9 as a reference to what the Hisense is doing, which is it's slightly raised. But remember, we're in a dark room. I'm using exposure to show you this. I doubt in a bright room you could tell the difference. Just saying. And if they weren't next to each other, look how close they get, right? So, all right, back to you, Saab. What would you recommend S90D? I'm concerned about ABL and OLEDs. Okay, so ABL and OLEDs, the G5 has solved a lot of the ABL because it gets so bright, has great thermal cooling. We expect even better ABL from the Panasonic Z95B with its active thermal cooling. And we know that S95F and S90F will have better or more improved ABL because it's more efficient thermal, new panel, right? Less heat put out, so its thermal regulation is not going to be tested. But if you're gaming and you're not gaming in SDR where it's like super bright, you should be okay because the average picture level in HDR, normally you have specular highlights, but the rest of the scene are not super bright. If you game in the dark, you should be okay. I've never had issues with the S90D other than sports. Now that's where ABL really kicks in because in sports, you have full screen hockey. Now, if you're playing games in SDR and you need that maximum brightness, you might want to wait for the S90F to go down in price. But as a gaming machine, the S90D is so solid. I could not think of a better TV for gaming at that price. So good choices there. All right, let's look at, let me see. I'm looking for bright demos because we know at certain brightness, you know what? Let's do normal one. Let's do the Serengeti. This doesn't get super bright, but let's see how they do with normal content. So it's a bit hyper exposed, but thank you for that super chat, Saad. All right, let's take down that exposure. It's a bit much, very hot. Oh yeah, okay. Look at that. In this scene, yeah, I guess you can tell that the Hisense U8Q, right, it's slightly lifted, just so slight, but it's doing a great job. No complaints. Getting closer though. Okay, AJ, this is something that you're bringing up that I definitely want to talk about, which is, first, the Bravia 5 does not have quantum dots, right? So the Bravia 7 does. However, and this is the big however, does it make a difference? So the Bravia 9 obviously has quantum dots, and the Hisense has quantum dots. But look at what happens. The Hisense image processing, the way they set the black levels, even with quantum dots, it feels like the Bravia 9 has deeper color, right? So the quantum dot is one thing, but then software is another. Now, not having seen the Bravia 5 side by side, I'm not going to say, oh, it's as good as the Bravia 9 in terms of color or the Bravia 7, but I've seen enough demos where you really have to choose the scenes to bring out the quantum dot. And I can't wait to see the Bravia 5, honestly, to have it compared to TVs with quantum dot, because how much of the quantum dot do you need? TCL is wrapped up in this lawsuit where there's not enough quantum dots, right? It's like they have quantum dots, but apparently it's not enough. And for most people, it's like, well, that's not a big difference. Okay, I can see that the Hisense, because of its slightly lifted black levels, the blue and that light blue feels a bit teal. Again, we're out of the box. Neither TV is calibrated, but it's just something for Samsung to know. Maybe they could fix it in an update. There we go, I'll start right here. So as the clouds move by, you'll see that as the clouds get lighter and lighter on the Hisense, it becomes more teal-like. There we go. Okay, I think you can see that now. It's very subtle. If it wasn't side by side, I can tell the difference. But the darkness of the clouds, let me turn up the exposure a bit more. Okay, I think you can see it better now. Yeah, it's very subtle. I remember I had a Samsung QN90B or 90A, and everything that was blue was teal. It was so weird. I mean, it looked great, but I'm like, wait, which is accurate? And at the time, I didn't have a reference monitor, so I couldn't tell, right? And let me raise the exposure a bit more here so you guys can see better. There we go. Oh, let me turn back that, get that scene back. So yeah, AJ, I mean, I know the guys at QD Nanosys will be upset at me saying this, but the quantum dot makes more of a difference for decay times. If you're a gamer, sometimes the red sticks if you don't have quantum dots, and so that could be an issue, right, for gaming. But otherwise, for just regular content watching, it shouldn't be a big deal. Turn the Hisense brightness down a hair. Well, here's the thing. In HDR, it's supposed to be max brightness, right? It's just they've raised the blacks. Turning brightness down is going to diminish its specular highlights. So to hit its max brightness accurately, it's really on Hisense to reduce the black level. Because everything else is very close, but everything, they lifted everything higher than it needs to be. So that's on Hisense. Turning it down will kind of make it, you're going to lose the brightness it's meant to be. Now, maybe the contrast, actually, you know what? Let's try that. This is a great scene to do that. Let's see if I can play with the contrast on this. Because I've had Hisenses before. I think it was like the H9G. I really had to play with that contrast. Let's see. Yeah, no, it's not the contrast. It hardly even changes. Wondering. Turn up the exposure so you guys can see what I'm seeing. There we go. That's what we're talking about. The Hisense, everything is slightly lifted, right? So, I mean, my contrast is down to 20, and that's not right. Maybe it is, but I doubt it. Oh, maybe it's supposed to be at 20. So black levels at -2, contrast at 20. Let's see what happens. We already know what its weaknesses are, so let's play with that. Who knows? Maybe it'll do better. All right, let's go back to those bright scenes. Like that one. Huh. No, didn't help. Yeah, I'm still losing detail here. So by taking down contrast, I might have made it worse. All this detail that's here is not here. So I could take down the brightness and see what happens. Let's bring the contrast back. Yeah, that did not work well. There we go. Back to 50. Black levels. But I'll keep the black levels at -2 though. Actually, that's slightly better, not by much. Okay, brightness. See, right now their brightnesses match. Let me see if that detail comes back though. No, it did not. So it's not the brightness. I'm not getting that detail back. Got to keep it at 100. Everything just went dimmer, but the detail didn't get better. And I'll show you guys. Oops. Maybe you guys can see the detail here. Right? So as I lower the brightness, everything gets less bright, but you're not getting that, well, okay, some of the details back, but now it looks like SDR. You might as well get the QM7K or the U7Q at this point, right? Because I have the brightness. So yeah, it's something with the image processing and the way they did the contrast. That's all. But you know what? We're pushing these TVs, by the way. So this is content that you will never see in real life, but it's something that I need to use to test to see the capabilities of a TV. And definitely it's an improvement over last year's U8, but not quite Bravia 9 killer, or not even a match, right? Forget killer. So, but it's good. It's got the brightness. Last year was all brightness and no tone mapping. And this particular set of scenes from Jennifer is not super bright. So it's not like I'm pushing the tone mapping of either TVs. Here's 2000 nits, right? Both TVs should handle this easy because it maxes out at 2000 nits. There we go. Okay. All right. And as I jump in to catch your questions, I may miss it, so please ask again. And I'll also have to check the super chats for you guys. Hey, thank you, Getty. FOMO, blooming versus raised blacks on the U8Q. You know, let's do the starfield. Since you asked, my friend, let's do some black level scenes. Thank you. We'll do dedicated view. Here we go. Dolby Vision True Blacks demo. All right. So we're going to get some scenes that shows different shades from deep black to near black. And we see, well, we already know the Hisense U8Q, slightly raised blacks. The question is there blooming though? And like right here, they all look kind of great, except you can see the contrast on the Bravia 9 is a little bit better, even in this scene. But that's because the U9Q is a little bit brighter. Yeah, definitely brighter in this scene. Let me take that down a touch. Let's do that one again, because the Hisense U8 is definitely brighter. But then the Bravia wanted more detail, and that's why it toned it down. It's very interesting. There's definitely less detail here on the Hisense, right here, slightly less. I'm going to turn up the exposure now so you guys can see how the blooming compares. But remember, the Bravia 9 is less bright, so I expect the U8Q to have a little bit more blooming. So let's see if I'm right. Okay. Oh, not bad. Not bad at all. So right here, the very top, slightly lifted, but not blooming. So both TVs are doing a phenomenal job of not blooming in this scene. And this is a bright scene. Let me turn up the exposure a bit more. Yeah. So the Hisense is there. It's got enough dimming zones. Not blooming. Slightly raised blacks, but not blooming. That's a good hand clap for Hisense. And we'll continue on. So we'll move on. Turn down exposure. I know it's annoying to see things hyper-exposed like that. Oh, here's another great scene. So let me turn this. I'll keep it exposed so you guys can see a few things here. So same exposure. increase exposure a bit more. And, okay, stop right there. So, very close. Now, which one is brighter is the question. The Hisense is definitely brighter. So with that extra brightness, it is not blooming as much as I had feared. Not bad. And looks like the black levels. Oh, let me look at the specular highlights. Let me turn it up. The Hisense has slightly brighter specular highlights, slightly. So I see what it's doing. It really is focused on getting you that specular highlight, but just ever so slightly. But then again, so these little ones here on black, Hisense is slightly, but then right here with color, this one in particular, Sony nails it. It's slightly brighter. So I'd say it's a wash. Other than this area being a bit more impactful because it's brighter, the specular highlights are very similar. With the Sony, when it's colored, wow, they really nailed that one. Let me see blooming on that and turn it back up again. See if you can catch it. See if there's any bad blooming there. Yep, the Sony made it brighter, but the Sony's blooming that one slightly. See, so it's a trade-off, guys. Because it's slightly brighter, I don't notice the blooming, by the way. I'm hyper-exposing it so that I can see it on the camera, but that's what happens. So, you know, you gotta choose your poison, right? All right, let's move on. Oh, yes, we're all seeing that blooming right there. How much brighter is it to be blooming like that? Oops. Yes, it's quite a bit brighter. It's about, geez, 3 stops brighter. It's almost 3 stops brighter than the Sony. And that's why it's blooming like that. So let me see. Yeah, so that's the difference in brightness, right? Is the Sony sees it and like, you know what? We're done with this brightness thing. We don't want to be blooming. So it pulled down the brightness, whereas the Hisense, now the question is, do I see the blooming? No. On the camera, I see it. But right here, no, it's so bright that I can't tell if it's blooming or it's just so bright. That's another one of those things where I know on the camera you can see the blooming, but it's really bright, this scene. So they're doing a good job for this scene, for sure. Okay, I think that will get you the brightness difference even better. See, there's no blooming. It's just, this is why you get the Hisense, is for scenes like this, where the Bravia 9 just doesn't want to deal with it, and Hisense, we'll do it. We'll flex. Hey, Phil, thank you for that super chat. Looking for an 83-inch or larger, under $3,000. Anything changed for recommendations since last Black Friday? Yes, the larger part. Mostly to be used for Switch and streaming movies. Perfect, right? Switch, all right, that's easy. So I'm really excited to see the QM6K. That is definitely under 3,000, and that's what, 98 inch? 98 inch? It's like 2,600. Consider the QM6K. That is perfect for streaming movies and perfect for Switch. It's HDR, yeah, it's good enough. I mean, it's not like the QM7K. It's not like the Hisense, but it hits your price range, and right now it's in the lead for my I mean, I really like this TV. It's like my editor's choice for value. Like for the price you're paying, whether it's 100 inch or 98 inch or 55 inch, I'd start with the TCL QM6K and don't look back. It's under 3,000. It's 98 inches of awesome. Now, if 98 inch is too big and you want to stay in the 85 inch range, then I'd say let's wait for, oh wait, what's the price? What was the price? Let me see, let me pop this up real quick. Oh, 5,000, oh, 2,500, there you go. 85 inch, I would recommend the Hisense right now. The U8Q, $2,500, 85 inch, phenomenal HDR impact. So that's one. So it'd be the 85 inch Hisense U8Q or the 100 inch QM6K based on your budget. Let me know. But that's a perfect use case though, because they will all look phenomenal. And here we go. Astrostol. Any thoughts on the 98-inch UX from 2024? I don't even know if it shipped. I've heard that there's not a lot of them out there. So I can't even give you an opinion whether that is something you should get or not. It's like this rare unicorn. I say don't get it, only because that's its first generation of awesome. We're now into the second generation of awesome. Versus the 100-inch U8Q, I would take the 100-inch U8Q. I would. Its processing is definitely improved. The 100 is ADS on both of them. They are both ADS Pro, right? Let me pull this. You would think I would memorize this by now. 100-inch, yes, ADS Pro. Yep. When it comes to these advanced TVs, Astrotol, I say always get the latest one from Hisense or TCL because year to year, they do improve their processing. They have so much catching up to do that you do see that improvement year to year. Whereas with Sony, it's like already up here, there's not a lot to go, right? So yes, I would take the 100-inch U8Q, save some money over the 98-inch UX because I think so far it's that good. Let's look at what the QM8K brings to the table as well. The TCL QM8K also comes in 100 inches or 98 inches and similar price. So let's wait. Don't rush into it. If you're trying to get the full movie experience, do you prefer a mini LED with much brighter highlights or OLED with their small specular ones? Great question. Thank you again, Saab, for the super chat. I go with size. The size immersion is the full movie experience. We're talking theater size. Now, if you're already sitting at a perfect distance, right? You have 85 inch, you're 7 feet away, 6 feet away. But if you're 10 feet away from your TV, you got to go with 100 inch minimum, right? Because at CES, they had this moving couch and we tried 98 inches from 8 feet, 9 feet, 7.5 feet, and I was just blown away. 7.5 to 8 feet, perfect for me. I would watch that all day long. It felt like I was in a theater. So go with size first. Then you could talk about, okay, I have some money. Can I get an OLED version versus mini LED? Because I think that size, well, first of all, when you're watching movies, you're not pushing the TVs like I am, right? So a mini LED at 98 inches, I know it can handle it. That's why I was recommending it for the last chat, 98-inch QM6K. I know it's going to look great watching just any old movie, right? So I do enjoy specular highlights. I'm not going to lie. OLED will give you better specular highlights, but I don't have $25,000 for a 97-inch LG, what is it, G5? 97-inch OLED, I mean, it's 25 grand. That would be great. But if you don't have the budget, get any mini LED at 65, at 100 inches or 98. And that right now would be the QM6K, amazing. The HDR Impact, you're going to get that with the U8Q. And you might want to wait for the Bravia 5, which also comes at 98 inch, which will also be, I believe, 6,000 or under. So you have some options, but I think the TVs with the specular highlights available for the movies, they could all handle it very well. We're not talking this level of specular highlights. Great question. thank you for the additional detail, Astrostol. The 98-inch UX and 100-inch U8QG are both 5,000 for what it's worth, and both are available. Technically, the 98-inch UX, sorry, I just got blocked. Technically, 98 UX is second gen straight UX 2023. Yes, and not just second gen, but I'm looking for maybe third gen, fourth gen. It's all about the image processing software for me. Oh wow, this one, this bright white is just hitting me hard. So this is where Hisense is coming to play, right here. I could see it from over there. I'm like, wait, what is that bright light? So I'm going to replay this scene. This is crazy bright. There we go. I mean, oh, yes. So this is where the Hisense U8Q says, all right, this is why you bought me. I can give you bright white windows no one else can while preserving some of that contrast, right? So I'm going to open up the exposure so you can see the contrast actually looks great on this one. So you guys watching black and white. Okay, let's watch that scene one more time. There we go. Look at that black level. Matches the Sony. So, black and white HDR impact. The Hisense U8Q beats the Bravia 9, both in terms of its black level shadow detail and the absolute brightness required of the scene. So if anyone's remastering Alfred Hitchcock at 4,000 nits, you get the U8Q because this is it. And I suspect that's what they were testing was this scene because they nailed this scene, right? I mean, look at that. That's pretty good. Good job, Hisense. I mean, there's got to be something, right, where you beat the Bravia 9 and it's this scene. So I'm going to enjoy it because this is the little victory that Hisense, you know, they're like, wait, come on, we got to win something, and it's not all bad. Well, when I say bad, I'm overstating it. Losses to the Bravia 9. And again, the Bravia 9, as context for those of you who just joined us, the Bravia 9 literally is still the best mini LED TV you could buy in 2025, despite being a 2024 model. I've tested it against the QM7K. Now we just tested it against the U8. Samsung is not even close with any of its TVs. The Bravia 9 is just a masterpiece last year, and it continues to be so. We'll see how the U9Q does from Hisense and how the QM8K and QM9K. QM8K is coming anytime now, so we'll have this. But I was like, can I replace the Bravia 9? And the answer is no, right? So, but for context, many of you have the Bravia 9, and I know you're like, we are still relevant in 2025. Yes, you are. Yeah, these kind of scenes, very cool. I just had to kind of let them flex, let them flex. Okay, let me see, check. I know I've got some super chats backed up here. Okay. And, oh, here we go. How's the color on the U8Q? Out of the box, it's close enough. Because it's a little bit raised, it's hard to say, but as you can see, the colors are very similar to the Bravia 9. I use the Bravia 9 as reference color because they do such a good job matching my reference monitor out of the box. And this gives you a sense. I think, we'll look at skin tones at some point. There you go. The colors are fine. I think traditionally Hisense color has been more accurate than TCL's. And it looks like in Warm 1, it's going to continue that trend. Now, it feels like there's a slight teal push that I can see, slight, and that's not a problem. It's not cooler. It's just this teal sometimes, where the Bravia 9 is a cool white, the Hisense is a teal. I think this is a great scene for me to pause and show you that. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Let me see if you guys can see that. I know YouTube compression. I don't know if you guys can see that teal push or not. Okay. And yes, I think you can. So if you look at the white area right here, it's just a slight, this is a cooler white, and this is a white that has a slight teal push. And it's kind of strange. It's not terrible. I couldn't tell without the Bravia 9 there, but now I can tell because I cannot unsee it. Not a big deal. Normally, if it's a warm push, it'll affect skin tones. Maybe this will affect Asian tones, right? Maybe Asians will look a little greener. I don't know. I'm going to have to pull out the Spears and Munsell. Actually, you know what? I will pull out a little Netflix so you guys can see how it affects like The Witcher, because that girl has very pale face. I think as far as HDR is concerned, I think we have some conclusions that we can make right now before we move on. And I think these generalizations are going to apply. But let me hit some of your questions first. Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees. I'm glad that the YouTube did not change much of that. Yeah, so if you guys see it, that it's there. It's not a made up. Okay, let's answer some questions. All day, air day. Hey FOMO, will there be a noticeable difference between the 77-inch and 83-inch S95F? Absolutely. No doubt about it. The 77-inch S95F is QD OLED. The 83-inch is what we suspect is using primary RGB OLED, right? They will have different personalities, as you saw in my big kickoff showdown at Value Electronics. The QD OLED has issues in bright room. That means the QD OLED absorbs the ambient light and lifts the black slightly, shifting it to this weird brown shade in a bright room. In a dark room, absolutely not noticeable at all. In a dark room, it's perfect, right? So that's one. The second thing is the 83-inch primary RGB OLED. We don't know how Samsung is handling some of the near black issues that LG is currently facing in HDR with the G5. Now, because we were watching in a bright room, we couldn't see anything. We only saw bright highlights. So my focus was on which TV is brighter, all of that. But when it comes to critical darkroom watching near shadow, you're going to have to be in a completely dark environment, which when the G5 comes, the 65-inch is not yet released apparently. I will test that against the Bravia 8 Mark II, Bravia 8II, for those of you who love that. We will see how the G5 compares to the Bravia 8 Mark II in those scenes where a lot of reviewers are seeing issues with the G5. But the question is that an LG thing, or is that something that's inherent to primary RGB? So we have two other TV makers using primary RGB OLED, so we can see whether it's LG's problem or it's a panel problem. First, Panasonic, they're releasing the Z95B sometime in June, I believe. And then we have the Samsung 83-inch. That will be primary RGB. And so depending on whether or not they have the same issues, then we'll know. So yeah, right now I can only assume it's LG's software processing, but we don't know. And Hayden asks, hey FOMO, 65-inch 895L or 65-inch Bravia 8 Mark II versus the 77-inch Bravia 8. So if cost is not a big deal, the 65-inch A95L is technically the predecessor to the Bravia 8 Mark II. Sony has told us countless times the Bravia 8 Mark II is a true follow-up to the A95L. So all the improvements you wanted for the A95L is in the Bravia 8 Mark II, and we saw that at the Value Electronics comparison. Definitely brighter, definitely better APL. Everything about it is in terms of brightness. Now, image processing is very similar, right? When you have similar scenes that are not as bright, the two are identical. similar color signs. So get the cheaper TV if you're not hitting the maximum brightness. If you're watching sports and you need that SDR to be brighter, you got to go with the Bravia 8 Mark II. For sports, it doesn't dim. It holds its brightness. I've been playing with it, watching sports. It's great. So I would get the Bravia 8 Mark II over the A95L without hesitation, unless you want the backlit remote. I think the A95L has it. So you might have to order that separately, right? It's the remote with a little USB-C thing on the bottom, and then you shake it, and then it's like backlit. It's $80 if you need it. The 77-inch Bravia 8 is larger. So if you're going to do that, I might as well go even larger and go with an 83-inch B5, right, for a similar price by Black Friday. The Bravia 8 falls behind both TVs. So last year's Bravia 8 is a tier below these two. Not as bright, not as impactful with HDR specular highlights, but if you're going up slightly larger size and you're mostly streaming anyway and you're watching in your bedroom at night, the 77-inch Bravia 8 is absolutely fine. If you're going for the maximum HDR impact and you're watching some sports in a brighter room, you might want the brighter TV, but I still like the size. That size increase is pretty significant, right? It's 12 inches larger. So I would take the Bravia 8 for the size if it's most normal content. Old TV shows, just Netflix, right? Just regular stuff where you don't need that hard impact. But it wouldn't be my man cave TV only because I'm a stickler for HDR impact. So use case, Apple TV, Blu-ray. Yeah, see, with that Blu-ray, you're like, well, if I want to watch Mad Max, if I want to watch this and that, I'd go with the 65-inch Bravia 8 Mark II. But again, your wife might say, yeah, I'd rather have the bigger TV. But if you're going to go bigger, go 83. That's kind of like my thing. Okay. Oh, let me pause here. Let's look at how these guys do in space. Let's see. Yeah. So the Hisense, slightly brighter, right? Each ray of star, each of these little rays are slightly brighter, but the trade-off is the black levels on the Bravia 9 are near OLED-like, right? Very black. But again, I'm hyper-exposing it so you guys can see the difference. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not distracting. Without the Bravia 9 above, I cannot tell that it's blooming because it's kind of even, right? Notice the uniformity. It's kind of all slightly lifted rather than blooming hard. But, you know, it's those little things that you're paying for with the Bravia 9. But then the Bravia 9 did not go as bright. So, you know, it just, and I'm not pausing. When you're watching this, let me just go back. I had to pause to see it. If I watch it in motion, will I notice it? Like right here, the Bravia 9 and the U8 look very similar. Now let's see it. It's moving. We're warp speed going backwards. Oh, there's that teal again. Well, I can really see it. Okay, it's not that. I think my monitor really pushed that teal. It's not that obvious. So this is where I think my camera made it more obvious than it is. It's there, but not that bad. Okay, so watch that. Interesting. You know what? I like the effect on the Hisense, but they're both great. They're so close. Okay. Hey, thanks for saying hello. Hello from Denmark, home theater Denmark. Hope all is great. Tango out. Thank you for coming by. And that blooming is horrible on the U8Q. Oh, come on. Is it horrible? I mean, it's there, and I had to hyper-expose it. But if I don't hyper-expose it for you guys won't see it. But you can see how bright it is, right? Come on. But yes, Sony is the king. That's It was not even close to be unseated. Now, the Hisense U8Q just made it to the nobles table. They are invited to dinner, but the king has not been unseated. There's no doubt. Okay, let's try some Netflix here real quick. Ooh, look at that. Oh. All right, let's see what we got. All right. Okay, where is your next watch? As you can see, when I'm here, people come by and only watch Asian dramas. All right, let me find my... Okay, you know what? Let's watch Asian faces. What am I talking about? We were talking, does it make Asian faces look green? And all I see are Asian faces. So how ironic is that? All right, let's see. Let's see this one. Love between fairy and devil. Here we go. All right, Asian face. Let's see if you become teal here. Ah, here we go. Nice pale face. Wait a minute. How did it look brighter on the Bravia 9? Let me pause this one. There we go. Okay, so apparently the Hisense may have changed the picture setting. Let me see what I got here. Why does it look so unbright? Oh, I think it's because it's SDR, that's why. So brightness is 45. I'll match the Bravia 9. Because it's SDR, I have it on max brightness, and that's technically not accurate either. What? It's on 15. Come on. Okay, I'm just going to raise the brightness here. Is it close? Okay, close enough. All right. And yeah, the faces, well, in this scene at least, let's look at more natural looking colors. Okay, you know what? This is too funky. This one is just, the colors just don't even look right. Let's see. Let's try this one. Actually, let's try, here we go. Ah, close up. There we go. Not bad. Let me lower the exposure a bit here. Yes, definitely more natural skin tones on the Sony. I'm looking at his forehead, and you do see a touch of that teal in the skin tone, just a touch. It's not unnaturally so without the Sony on top. It needs a bit more magenta. I don't think there's enough of it. That's why it has that teal look. So let me see if you guys can see that. Let me lower the exposure a bit more. And drop the brightness a touch. Okay. All right, I think that's a match now. All right. And he's the king. What is the skin tone even supposed to be, though? They could have graded the show to be bluer. They could have. Wait, are you telling me to pull out my reference monitor, Kurangi? Are you telling me that? Do I have time to pull the reference monitor? It's only 2 o'clock. How many of you want me to pull out the reference monitor? And then we'll see what's what, right? Right? So I think it's a challenge to pull out the reference monitor. All right. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe it's supposed to be teal. Let me pull out the reference monitor. Because now that we're talking out of the box, but I told you before, you guys are non-believers. I already told you that the Bravia 9 is very close to the reference monitor. So here it is. Let's pull out this baby. All right. The things I do. I'm not going to find the power cord. Oh, I think I found it. Okay. You have to set this for SDR. There we go. Done. Okay. All right. Let me see if you guys can see that. Yeah, and both TVs are way too bright. That's the problem. So let me match the exposure to match the brightness to the reference monitor by eye. And we know how calibrators hate that, but you know what? That's all I can do. Okay. I think that's close. All right, close enough. Let's put this guy over here. Okay. Now let me take a close look. And yes, this Sony looks more like the reference monitor. I know you guys did not believe me. Let me turn down exposure a touch. Yeah, I still think the Hisense might be a little bit too bright. Okay, there we go. All right, skin tones. And it's close. Come on guys, it's close, right? Come on. The reference monitor. Thus, it's a reference monitor, right? It's a dual cell, awesome. Let's try some stuff that we all love. Witcher. Let's see how the Witcher does with their subtle pale faces. I know is there we go. Let's see. I see it right there. Oh, now I'm at HDR. Here we go. Let me double check. Yes, 4K HDR. Let me switch monitor back to the right setting. Okay. Fine balancing act. So as my monitor catches up to the HDR signal, you guys can see. Let me see. Okay, let's make sure settings are right. Let's double check the settings. Yep. Picture mode, HDR, brightness, gradation preferred. Okay, all the good stuff. Hisense. It is unusually bright. Let's see if I'm in the right picture mode. Filmmaker. Black level still -2. Yeah, definitely slightly brighter on the Hisense, and I don't know why. I think it's because it's inaccurately raising the brightness. One, two, three. I'm going to have to play with this again later. Yeah, it's just reading SDR right now. So I'll have to turn off my reference and try it again later. This is what happens when you have professional equipment. You just have to take my word for it that the Bravia 9 is accurate for now. Okay, so maybe because dynamic tone mapping is on, let me turn it off. That could be it. Let's check dynamic tone mapping. Yep. Ah, there we go. Still slightly bright even with it off, I think. I'll trick down the brightness a touch. Okay, 70, it's close enough, right? All right, all right. Okay, so you see the skin tone differences on her face. I like it because you can definitely see the difference. So there's a bit more blush and magenta on the scene above, and on the Hisense, it feels like you need to add a bit more of that. So let's go into this next one. Let's see how good looking he can be. Actually, let me see this HDR rendering here. Yeah, both look pretty good. And this is what I'm talking about. You really don't need to get the best of the best TVs because Netflix makes it so easy to render these scenes. But it must be said that the Hisense is definitely brighter specular highlights. But I know the Bravia is capable of that, so I guess they just choose to do this scene, to render the scene differently. All right, so specular highlights on, yep, on the Hisense, all the specular highlights are slightly brighter. And you guys know that I turned off the dynamic tone mapping, so that's just how Hisense interprets the scene. Let's look at the shadow detail real quick. And yeah, shadow detail is very similar on both TVs. So this is why you don't necessarily need a Bravia 9 to watch Netflix, other than you want color accuracy out of the box. You can get it from the Bravia 5. But yeah, there's definitely a teal push that my camera is even more sensitive to that, but it's there. It's just not as bad as it's showing on YouTube. All right. And yeah, it can be calibrated out. And again, this is why it's so hard to match or to show color on YouTube, is everything is over exaggerated because the sensor is just very sensitive to that. So here's a good point, Nari. Nard. If you plan on comparing a Sony to a Hisense, you need to adjust the settings because filmmaker mode is not equal. The premium cost of a Sony TV includes premium professional graded calibration. And the answer is actually at the factory. So at the factory, a premium Sony, and we're talking the top Sonys, right? The Bravia 9, Bravia 7, Bravia 5. At the factory, they work very hard to get the TV the way they want it in terms of color. Panasonic does the same. And you're paying that premium. That's the Sony tax. Hisense, they do what they can at the factory, but it's not to the same level of precision or accuracy. So if you take what you save in terms of the price, but then add an extra $400 to $600, $700, depending on where you are, to pay for calibration, then you might as well get a Sony, right? The whole point of going with the Hisense is to save money. But if this stuff, and it's very subtle, doesn't bother you, then it's not a big deal. Like, if I didn't have the Bravia 9, I wouldn't know what's what. They both look great. So it's just something to keep in mind. Right. Hey, you're welcome, Jimmy. Thanks for showing up. Scenes right here where the Bravia 9 brightness is just next level. And it's actually the processing, because we're not, if it's brightness alone, a lot of TVs do that well, right? And let's look for another scene. Here's a good one. Let's see how his face does. There we go. I mean, it's close. Yeah, I know. Someone's going to say, but I see the teal in his arm, right? It's there. It's there. I see it too. But only because I have the Bravia next to it. Otherwise, his face looks fine, right? Let's see a darker complexion, right? There's one. His buddy here. See, it looks great, right? This one, it doesn't matter. It definitely depends on your complexion. There we go. But then you see it in the walls. I'm being so mean to Hisense, but they got to change it, right? They got to. So this is kind of funny. Okay. So I love it. Brightness preferred on the Bravia 9 is so nice. Yeah, sports, you know, where you want the extra bit of power, it's there. Great question, Nathan. Is it worth upgrading from the A95K to the Bravia 8 Mark II? All right, so here's my suggestion. If you watch sports a lot and your complaint is A95K can't hold the brightness, if you have a 55-inch and you go up to 65 and you're getting that brightness, the answer is yes. If you're staying the same size, oh man, this movie is going to look identical, right? It's not going to be that big of a jump. But if you're gaming, it'll be brighter. If you're watching sports, it will be brighter. There's no dimming in sports. If that's the stuff that bothers you, then it's worth upgrading. But if you're mostly streaming, watching news and stuff like that, I don't think so. Speaking of news, or speaking of live, let's see what we got with the live stuff here. All right, free play Google TV. There we go. Let's see how they do. Because I did not know this, but over 50% of people who buy TVs, they go straight to free TV. So here we are, free TV. Let's see how it looks. SDR, my friends. Oh, if you didn't catch my SDR video, here we are. Oh, I can't pause. I'm trying to pause here. Looks great. They both look fine. Let me take down. Can't run this one too long, get in trouble. All right. Okay, there we go. Let's move on. I think actually surprisingly looks so similar. Stop. There we go. Okay, let's look at some news. Here we go. Channel 4 News midday. Let's see what's happening in the world. The weather looks great on both TVs. Look at that. They actually look nearly identical. Hey, I think I know her. Actually, I saw her at the Beyonce concert. What a coincidence. That's so awesome. I'll have to call my friend. Hey, I saw your wife on TV. Now I know where to find her. Okay. All right. That's enough of that. A95L was the king of OLED 2 years ago, and now I'm predicting the Bravia 9 will do the same. The Bravia 9 was released last year. It, to me, I know it's very subjective, it is the king of LCD TVs. It was the king in 2024. I suspect it will be the king this year, but remember, the U8Q, as top as it is, it's still just behind the U9Q, as well as the QM9K is coming out, but we'll have the QM8K. QM8K, yes. That will be in the studio maybe in a week or so. I cannot wait. I mean, the Bravia 9 is just like, boom, boom, right? It's so great. And of course, we'll have the Hisense versus the QM8K as well, obviously. And you're welcome. Thanks for the video. Your enthusiasm for home entertainment is appreciated. I appreciate you guys. I thought I was the only one. Hey, Getty, is the teal a panel issue or anything else? So this is the thing. Let's actually talk about this. Let me put this on Jen's channel. I don't want to get in trouble. Blue Bloods is going to come down on me, right? Last time we put Mario Brothers on so long, they had to shut down the stream. Nintendo was not happy. There we go. Let's give you guys something to watch here. Actually, you know what? Let's put out the super bright 4,000 to 9,000 nit while I answer this question, because that is a good question. Thank you. 4,000 to 1,000 nit, 10,000 nit Bravia 9. I think this is the one I want to see. Oh yeah. Bring on the lizard. Yes, the Hisense U8Q is killing it in this scene. Definitely brighter and preserving that color correctly. So actually I got to lower that exposure a bit more. My goodness. There you go. Excellent. Okay. So all panels, VA, IPS, it doesn't matter. All panels has some color tinting issue. And the question is, what does the TV maker do at the factory to address that? So let me take this off so you guys can see it in its full glory. You know what? Let me readjust the TV because now we no longer have the reference monitor. There's no reason for it to be tilted. There you go. Oh, try that again. There we go. Okay. So, as I was saying, all LCD panels, doesn't matter where it comes from, BOE, CSOT, they're going to have, it's a panel lottery, it's a variation, it's a panel variance. So some panels will be pushing teal, some may be pushing magenta, whatever, right? It could be at the end of the year, tooling changes, whatever happens, it's going to come out slightly different for literally every piece of every panel. So TV makers have to address it at the factory to a certain degree. The question is, how particular are you? You know, are you type A personality like Sony and Panasonic? Or are you just going to let it go? Oh, whatever, it's close enough, right? So let's go with the extreme example of Sony. Since we were at Sony headquarters in Japan and they showed us what they did, every panel at the factory, they literally shoot a special camera and adjust to every color imperfection, not just the entire panel. Certain parts of the panel might have imperfection. The edge might be magenta and the center might be green. They address all of that in a firmware that is even closer to the TV than the firmware itself. It's fixed at the panel level in software. Then from there, in the firmware level, they will calibrate. So Sony takes extra pains to do that. Now, what you're seeing here with the teal is just Hisense not taking that extra step to compare it to what reference should be. They think it's close enough. They didn't catch the teal. It is what it is. And so, but in another panel, it may not be teal. It just happens to be this one. So it could be a line that's running teal this month. It could be panel to panel. Maybe the next one's perfect. Or it could be the entire technology. It doesn't matter. The manufacturer has the ability to offset that, right? They could compensate for that because, again, no panel comes out of production perfect. None. You have to make the necessary adjustments on a panel by panel basis. And this is why I love Sony so much, as well as Panasonic. If you don't want to touch calibration, great out of the box. Samsung, it depends on the year. Some years, they're very into perfection and accuracy. Some years, you know what? We'll saturate this, that, or the other. Recently, they've been very good at filmmaker mode. I really like what they're doing. So Samsung is doing it well. But if you put it on certain grays, you'll see dirty screen effect here and there, and they don't take as many pains to offset dirty screen effect, whereas Sony does. So this really affects LCD panels. So hopefully, that's a long-winded way of saying that, back to your question, to make sure I answer your question, is this teal a VA or anything else? So it's not unique to VA. You may see this teal on non-VA panels. I saw the teal on the QN90A, I think, and that was a VA panel. But then BOE's IPS 80S Pro might have different color problems, right? But it's up to the panel maker. They can make adjustments, and it's up to the TV maker to offset what came out of the panel factory. So to me, it's not a big deal. It should be addressed in a calibration. And again, if you get the TV, you don't notice it, without the Sony next to it, right? You wouldn't have noticed it. Yeah, a teal fix with a white balance tweak or calibration, and you have to have a reference. Like, you don't want to overcompensate. Now it looks magenta, right? So definitely get a calibrator, because if someone shares their setting with you and it was calibrated, but their TV didn't have the teal, it had something else, now you're going to have teal and a different problem, right? So when it comes to this, you really have to bring in a calibrator, because I really believe that it's a panel-to-panel issue. This talk is selling me on the Panasonic Z95B. I'm sold on the Z95B, and I haven't even got it in my studio yet. I'm very excited to see where that is, for sure. Man, you guys are great for hanging out here. And let me make sure I covered everything. Yeah, I think I have. Here we go. Liberty Hour. Since you have the TVs, you could test the ATSC 3.0 tuner speed while OTA channel surfing and see if they are all slow or one is faster between the A95L, the B9, the Bravia 8, and the Hisense. So, Liberty, I do have an OTA antenna splitter in the back. I have not connected it to the Hisense. It's going to take a few minutes to run the channel, but you know what? I'll have to do it on a different video. But had I known you were going to ask this, I would have had to done it ready ahead of time, and we'll see. But I have not been impressed by ATSC 3.0. There absolutely is no improvement in Los Angeles. None. It's the same bad whatever digital signals I've been getting in 1.0. Nothing's changed. They have not upgraded their firmware at all, or rather they have not upgraded their hardware to do ATSC 3.0 justice. It's just ATSC 3.0 container, exact same equipment, no improvement. So I'm very disappointed. All right. I didn't mean today. Oh yeah, I'm gonna run to it right now. Okay, thanks for that. And I'm sure I'll get to it, right? I mean, I did get that antenna splitter for a reason, is to help you guys out. All right, let me see if I missed any other questions. And then we've been running, oh my God, 2 hours. You know what, why don't I wrap up my conclusions about the Hisense right now so that I have a timestamp at the 2-hour mark. So, after 2 hours of streaming all this wonderful content from Jennifer Gala, thank you again, Jennifer. I put her channel in the link below for you guys to check her out. The best HDR content on YouTube for testing TVs, there is no doubt. And I'm going to ask her to create special content for the TV shootout. King of TVs coming up on July 12th. You guys are going to love that one. So Jennifer's content, we did some Netflix to look at skin tones, right? King of China, a little bit of Witcher. And so here are some initial conclusions. And obviously these things, it's so early. They may be fixed by the end of the year. Maybe. Not just that it will, but there has not been a firmware issued for the U8Q yet. And as with all TVs, with every consecutive firmware, things get slightly better. Like the Bravia 9 has had almost 2 years of firmware to make it the best, right? So just give you guys a heads up about that. And I'll be holding on to this Hisense TV for a few months, right? Anytime we receive a Hisense or a TCL or whatever TV that I think is promising, I tell the maker, look, leave me the TV for as long as you can until I finish beating it up, right? Like, oh, at that point, we don't want it back. So, all right, then leave it with me to test. So it's a long-term tester. Now, the conclusions. First, the U8Q definitely gets brighter in some scenes. But interestingly, not all scenes. 5,000 nits, I believe, is in certain scenes. You guys saw the black and white scene, right? That Alfred Hitchcock comment I made. When it's black and white, phenomenal. Perfect, boom. Brighter than the Bravia 9. Bravia 9 didn't even come close, right? I think it was like 3 stops difference. Definitely for white content, 5,000 nits. But as we know, color does not hit 5,000 nits. I don't care what color it is. Red, blue, green, it's not going to hit 5,000. It has to be white. So when you bring the color down, and that's why it will pass the test. If you put it on a white window, oh, I got 5,000 nits. But like this scene, yeah, some of the white parts would be 5,000. But any of the green parts, not even close. So where there is some color, the Bravia 9 matches the brightness, even surpassing it by a stop here and there. And you saw where I pointed that out. Not only that, the Bravia 9, in those bright colored scenes, had better tone mapping that preserved the brightness while adding color detail, contrast. And so the Hisense U8Q still has a little work to be done. Forget the dimming zones. Hisense, no more dimming zones. You don't need it. The Bravia 9 at the 65-inch has less dimming zones. Your price point is perfect, so there's no complaints. What I'm saying is, if you want Hisense to raise its game at this price point, it's all software. You don't need to spend any money on hardware anymore, right? Stop. Focus on spending money on bringing in a color tuner, a colorist, a calibrator, doesn't matter. Get that up to speed, and then you will match the Sony Bravia 9 because that's all you're missing. I can see the potential of this TV because I know it's got the dimming zones. I know it's got the mini LEDs, right? It's got everything. I mean, it's got the 3 HDMI 2.1 ports plus the display port, USB-C, all capable of 165 hertz. I mean, the hardware specs are phenomenal. But it's all about the little things. And that's what Sony is getting right. And it's something that it's going to take time. I'm patient, right? It's a new TV every year. But as far as I'm concerned, Hisense is done. It should be done with adding money to hardware specs. I don't think it needs any more. It can do it right. So for the price, currently $1,400, I recommend it. This is similar to how last year's TCL QM8 did. Well, actually, QM7 was really a giant killer. And to the same degree, this Hisense isn't 90% of the Bravia 9, absolutely. But the last 10%, you saw the difficulty, right? The teal may or may not bother you. You may or may not notice it. The specular highlights, very similar. Black levels, slightly lifted, but in a bright room, irrelevant. You won't notice that. We saw the TV shows, look great, right? There's nothing wrong. The out-of-the-box color accuracy used to be an issue for many TV makers. No longer. I think it's improved year to year. So it's not a giant killer I would hope it to be. 2 years ago, it would have destroyed everything in its class. This year, the giant is just such a big giant. And so now I see why Sony did not upgrade the Bravia 9. Although I did wish that the Bravia 9 came at 98 inches or 100 inches. That would have been the only addition. But the Bravia 9 still leads the pack for now. So my conclusions are that. If I'm missing anything, let me know in the comments below. All right. Let's see what you guys got. And yes, it is more accurate out of the box. Bravia 9 is not calibrated, but it's pretty consistent. So yes, thank you for that comment. Oh, please, can you test Bravia 9 Dolby Vision versus HDR10? Some think Dolby Vision is broken, and some like me prefer it over HDR10. And now Dolby Vision Bright is fine, better than HDR10, blah, blah, blah. Let me see. Can this splitter do Dolby Vision? Maybe. Let me see. Because both TVs can pass Dolby Vision. That is a good question. Actually, I will see right now. Let me test to see if I can do Dolby Vision. If I can, I will compare it for you right now, Leon. Because what else am I doing? What the heck? All right, display and sound, HDR, unsupported format. Yeah, my splitter doesn't pass it, so I can do, yeah, it would take too long. I would have to, actually, I can do it right now. I have a different splitter. I'll run it through a two-way splitter. Give me a few minutes. Entertain yourselves, my friends. Let me run it through my Dolby Vision splitter number 2. Forgot about that one. Let's see what happens. Okay. All right. Oop, wrong one. There we go. And okay. Fingers crossed this will work. Okay, let's see what happens. All right, is Dolby Vision on? Yes, we have Dolby Vision. We can test. Netflix, Dolby Vision. Let's see how they do. Dolby Vision. Okay. Dolby Vision testing. Good call, my friend. Witcher, HDR. Let me restart that. Let's see this. Wasn't Craven in Dolby Vision? Let me see. Yes, here we are, Dolby Vision. Okay, this dark scene. They look very close. Let me look at some. Here we go. All right, let me adjust my exposure for you guys. And let's see how it shows in Dolby Vision. It's Dolby Vision IQ, custom, Dolby Vision game, Dolby Vision IQ, Dolby Vision dark. That's supposed to be the accurate one. So let's keep it at Dolby Vision dark. And then we got Dolby Vision bright. All right, let's go to Dolby Vision dark. Ooh, yeah, too dark. Yes, so Dolby Vision bright on the Sony is similar to Dolby Vision dark on the Hisense. Which is right? I don't know, because I don't have a Dolby Vision reference monitor. You're gonna have to get this calibrated. But as you can see, Dolby Vision bright on the Sony, right here, right, is the same as Dolby Vision dark on the Dolby Vision dark. Wait, let me turn that down. There we go. So we're Dolby Vision Dark on the Hisense and Dolby Vision Bright on the Sony. So if you're asking, yes, Dolby Vision Dark on the Sony is still not working because it shouldn't be that dark. That was pretty dark. So let me turn up exposure so you guys can see this. Right, so this is the scene, and the Sony is not perfect, clearly. The Bravia 9 is on Sony, so the Hisense is on Dolby Vision Dark, and the Bravia 9 is Dolby Vision Bright. And when I go to Dolby Vision Dark, it's a bit darker. Now, is that the correct way to go? I don't know, but you're gonna have to be in a really dark room. But to match the Hisense, I would have to use Dolby Vision Bright, honestly. So, but let's go into the brighter scenes, right? I actually liked Craven. This was a guilty pleasure here. All right. And the Sony is quite a bit brighter. Oh, maybe it should be in Dolby Vision Dark. Jeez. Okay. So Dolby Vision Dark now matches the Hisense here. Very similar. Even Dolby Vision Dark is a bit brighter than the Hisense. This is so weird. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's right, honestly. Mostly because you need a Dolby Vision reference, so you have to get it calibrated. So you need a reference Dolby Vision TV that's calibrated properly. And out of the box, I believe only LG comes close to being correct out of the box. Yeah, these TVs are kind of a little bit different. But they're close in this scene. Let's try this scene. Ooh, yeah. Definitely better contrast on the Bravia 9 in this scene. Slightly better. I'm making it sound like, oh, it's a big difference, but it's not. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So Sony's not that bad. It just depends on the scene. That dark scene was a bit too dark, I think. Or just maybe I have bad eyesight. I'm looking for something bombastic. Let's see here. Yeah, the skin tones, definitely. Here, let me take off your chat. Thank you for that question. So we're in Dolby Vision, and the skin tones on the Sony definitely looks more natural. You could see the teal in her face a little bit, no doubt. But out of the box comparison, right? This is what you get with the Sony. Lisa, you have two Sonys. Come on. You know you love your Sony. This is why you got a Sony, right? Yeah, and the contrast is better. Right, you guys saw. Shiba Dog shouting good luck in a megaphone. Thank you, Leon. Thank you for that sticker. You're awesome. Yes, I do take special requests. A phone where you're putting in some hours. And because it's not a Friday, right? If it's Friday, I'll be out there having fun with you guys. Ha! Oh, you guys are cool. Okay, I think this answers the Dolby Vision question a little bit. To a certain degree. I mean, it's not that dark. Like here, that's fine. I think at least you have options. Let's look at Dolby Vision IQ. I think that's supposed to adjust a little bit better, but it's kind of weird. Yeah, I agree. The Dolby Vision Dark on Sony in dark scenes is way too dark. And this is why you have to get Sony Dolby Vision calibrated, I believe, to really get what you're supposed to get. Let me see this. But let's try Dolby Vision IQ. And then we'll try the dark scene again. Oh, they don't have Dolby Vision IQ. Well, never mind. Maybe Dolby Vision Bright is Dolby Vision IQ. I actually like it bright, so I'm going to stick to Dolby Vision Bright, my guilty pleasure. I think it looks even better, honestly. But it's subjective because, you know, you do what you enjoy, right? This is Dolby Vision Custom. Nope. Here we go. What's this? Dolby Vision IQ. So I'm going to put the Hisense on Dolby Vision IQ. So there you go. Just having fun with Dolby Vision. Basically, when you get a TV, it doesn't matter what TV it is, play with the settings. you all have different vision. So actually, I want to talk about that. Everyone's eyesight is different, not just your acuity of vision, right? But your color sensitivity. Some are hypersensitive to pink and blue, others are hypersensitive or not sensitive enough to blue, right? You got people with slight red-green issues. So no two people see color alike. And so that's why you have a reference monitor to go, wait, that's reference? It looks terrible. Hey, you're not wrong. Your eyesight see things differently. So always adjust the TV to what's natural to you because you're offsetting and compensating for your own eyesight. Since no eyesight is the same, it's really hard to say to people, oh, you got it wrong. The Sony looks great. And you're like, but I don't like reference D65. Everything looks too yellow because you're hypersensitive to yellow, right? And so that's why I never argue with people about color accuracy. I always look at contrast, brightness. Those are the things that everyone can see very well. But when it comes to color, I say, look, play with it, get a calibrator, tell the calibrator what looks good. They'll calibrate to your taste, and then they'll calibrate to reference. You're like, oh, I hate reference. Like, hey, it's your bill. So yeah, you know, it's our eyesight is also different. So don't even worry about not being accurate if you prefer a different look. FOMO, when will you collaborate with Robert at Bravia Electronics again? I'm glad you picked that up. If you didn't hear earlier, July 12th is the King of TVs shootout. All the TVs will be there. We're talking the Panasonic Z95B will be there, the 83-inch Samsung S95F will be there, of course the G5. So you're going to have all colors of awesome at the shootout for us to compare. Very exciting. July 12th. Put it down. Now I'll start live streaming on July 11th. Get you guys excited with July 10th. Well, it's that weekend, right? So I'll be there getting things up and running on Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. So how we're going to break it down is Saturday will be OLED TVs, Sunday will be LCD TVs. We'll have a king of LCD, and then we'll have a king of OLED. And remember what this king means. So let's define that. It is how closely these TVs match a reference monitor. All the TVs will be calibrated to within an inch of their life by the best calibrators who know these TVs very well. And Dwayne Davis himself will be overseeing all the calibration. He wants to make sure these TVs have no excuse. And then, you know, he'll also calibrate the reference monitors, and he'll spend days doing this. And so he'll have a completely dark theater room, no stray light or anything. We will be in an adjacent room. Is it still adjacent if it's across the street? We'll be in a room across the street, same TVs, except, and the reason why we're doing this is he'll be using content that is copy protected. And if you notice in previous years, I couldn't even show the content because it's all copyright protected because they keep on running the same content over. And, you know, YouTube is going to shut down the stream if I did that. So all you had was just my face talking, which I don't think brings the same effect. So across the street, this is where we'll work with Jennifer Gala. We will contact her and recreate the kinds of scenes that the calibrators and the judges will be watching in our identical TVs across the street, so you guys can see generally how the TVs perform. Now these TVs will also be calibrated for bright room watching because after the dark room is done, they're going to go across the street to where we are, kick me out, right? Brian, I will be live streaming and hosting the show. We'll get kicked out, we'll shut down the show. They will then grade the TVs for bright room watching. And then the next day we'll have a score and then we'll do a reaction. And then we'll continue with LCD TV watch, right? All the mini LED TVs, it should be shorter. It wouldn't take that long. And then they'll kick us out again and they will then judge the LCD TVs, right? The Bravia 9, maybe the Hisense, and see how they do. And then there will be a king of LCD mini LED TVs awarded Sunday. And then Monday, we will have a reaction and talk about that. So that's our July 12th weekend. It's going to be so much fun. Oh, Leon, I didn't know this. Sadly, the Sony light sensor in Dolby Vision Bright is broken. If you're in a dark room and use it takes a heavy black crush in dark scenes. Well, that would explain it. Maybe the sensor is not doing what it should be doing. And that's Sony's strength, is that sensor. Yep, yep. And hey, Frank, thank you for the compliment. You're the most sincere and amazing reviewer. I cherish your honesty. I try to be honest. I mean, you guys are buying the TV, right? So I want to make sure you get a TV that you're happy with. Mr. Super Chat. Oh, all right, Getty. Hey, I caught it now. Thank you, Getty. Thank you for that. Okay, super chat from Getty. Hey, FOMO, I recommend you watch the movie 300 Love the Blacks and Specular Highlights. The movie 300. I thought the movie was called 300 People Love the Blacks. Like, wait, what is this? All right, so the movie is called 300, The Blacks and Specular Highlights. All right, I'll look for that. Great content, by the way. Can't wait for the QM8 versus the U8Q. Yes, the QM8K is coming. I already got a phone call from TCL. FOMO, it's coming. And so I will be, for sure, on May 27th, mark it down, we will have the QM8K live stream on May 27th against the, well, you're seeing the U8. I'm going to have it against the U8Q because they are similarly priced. And then in another live stream following that, not the same day, I'll bring in the Bravia 9. But a lot of you have this budget that you have to stay under 2,000 or under 1,600. And that QM8K versus U8Q is very relevant to you guys because if you had the money, you would have gotten the Bravia 9, obviously, right? So sticking under 1,500. Now, I know the QM8K will launch at above 1,500, but it will end up where the U8Q is right now. So on our live stream, it will be the U8Q versus the QM8K. You know the weaknesses and the strengths of U8Q. So you're going to have the spoiler. What will TCL do? So I'm pretty excited for that. Thanks for that reminder. All right. Let me see if there's anything else. If not, I'm going to wrap this up in a minute. Can you put Prue on? Who's Prue? Or is it another show? Another Dolby Vision show? Oh wait, here's some specular. Oh, here's close-up of a face. Let's see how they render faces. All right. There you go. A little too dark. My bad. Okay, that should do it. All right. Yeah, that's closer to what I see. Okay. Sean, all I see is teal. Oh, you're not wrong. All I see is teal too. You guys are killing me. I'm looking at, okay, it's not that bad, but yeah, I do see it. So I'm going to end it with this, right? So Hisense can see it. Oh, put on Peru. It's on YouTube. Is that all? So Matt and Bev, if Peru is shot by certain creators, I may not be able to do that. If it's shot by Jennifer Gala, yes, because Jennifer, she's one of our, we consider her a collaborator, but others are not so kind when we use their content, and I respect that. That's why we don't use others' content. So, is it? Yeah, I know which Peru when you're talking about with the bright red ponchos and stuff. Brandon asks, when are you getting the G5 in? The 65-inch has not been released yet. I've been promised, I've called Electronics and they don't understand what the delay is. So the 55 and 65 apparently have not shipped yet. They're still shipping out the 77 and the 83. Plenty of those, but I don't need a TV that large. So I'm waiting for the 65. And as soon as that comes in, boom, it'll be here. The first comparison will be, of course, against the Bravia 8 Mark II in all the scenes that I know the G5 struggles. And then we'll do the scenes where we know the G5 is strong. And then, of course, we'll have my peeled S95D that's right behind these TVs. So it's going to be fun. Very fun. All right. Okay. I think let's leave it on a high note for Hisense. That scene, what? No, not that one. This one. I think we'll leave Hisense with a high note. Jennifer Gala's black and white. Here we go. Oh, close enough. not much of a high note if you keep on focused on that teal. But oh, coincidentally, my labels are also kind of teal, right? Oh, wow. Do I have this on Dolby Vision? What the heck? This is not okay. There's something that's completely off. I gotta make sure I have the right. Energy saving, of course. See, I knew it wasn't that bad. Okay, we're back in Filmmaker. There we go. All right. I'm like, what? What happened? So also be careful. The TVs like to jump into energy saving mode, as you saw. Yeah, much better. Energy saving is clearly too blue. So if you get it calibrated, calibrate energy saving as well, please. Let's make sure, professional. Yep, we're good. Okay. All right. Hey, ask your questions now. We're wrapping up in 5 minutes. How high of a note can you hit? Let's hear. I can't even falsetto anymore. Give me a guitar, I'll hit a high note, right? But that's it. Do that now, I might break something and limp out doing it. Okay. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this stream. Let me check super chats before I leave. Make sure I don't miss anyone. All right. I think I cut all the super chats. Hey, I really appreciate you guys coming by. I hope you will make a decision in terms of, if you can't make a decision whether or not to get the Hisense U8Q, let me know. And if the teal bothers you, it's only because it's next to an amazing Bravia 9. I don't think, honestly, you'll notice it, but maybe you cannot unsee it anymore. Let me know in the comments below. Does the slight teal tint make it a deal breaker for you? Personally, I don't think it would be. Unless you have a Sony TV next to it, then it shouldn't be. Well, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments below, everyone. Until next time, my friends, stop the FOMO.